Hey, welcome to the tutorial, guys. Today we are going to see what is Azure Storage account, and by the end of this tutorial, you will be able to create a storage account and then create a container in Azure Storage, and you will be able to upload and download blobs in that container, and then you will get to know what is Azure Storage Services, and then you will learn how to change the access tiers and on the fly, and you will also learn what is blob types, and then we will be learning how to protect the data, and then towards the end of this tutorial you will have an idea what is lifecycle management. We will do a lab on this, and then we'll also do a lab on object replication. So that's it, guys. So before going on starting creating Azure account, let's understand the terminology. What is Azure Storage? So Azure Storage is a Microsoft object storage solution for the cloud, and Blob storage is optimized for storing massive amounts of unstructured and structured data. So what does it mean is you can store a text file or a binary data in Azure Storage. And the other cool thing is that you can store and persist data by an on-premise also or a Azure hosted service. That's it, guys. So let's go on to the Azure portal, and let's create a storage account. So before creating a storage account, you have to make sure that where do you have your resource group in place. So I have my resource group in Central US. Let's go and create a storage account in Central US. So click on to the create icon. So how to go to the storage account is you basically go to the search bar and then click storage accounts, and then click create, and you will have this wizard, and let's fill in the name. Okay, I'm on the storage account wizard, and we have placed on the Central US because my resource group is in that, and let's give an exam name as example for storage account name, and you see a pop-up error message saying that storage account name example is already taken. So we should always make sure that we have a unique storage name which is not being taken by anybody. So since this is on the Central US, let me go and create something called Central US customer data, and then let's assume that this is a store that is on the 100th region. So 100th region, so let's just name it as 100th. And then coming on to the performance tier, I'm going to use a standard tier because we are using this for a demo purpose. But if you are designing an application that requires a low latency, then you have to go and click on the premium. And when you click on the standard, it always falls on the general purpose V2 account. And then moving on to redundancy, there are a bunch of redundancy: geo redundant storage, zone redundant storage, and geo zone redundant storage. And out of this, the lowest cost option is geo redundant storage. So let's click on to the advanced, and then you have a bunch of security settings. Right now it's on the TLS version 1.2. let's just keep it like that, and then move on to the important part where it is access tiers. So access tier is a type in storage account. We have two types. One is the hot and is a cold cool tier. So what is that hot tier is like when you want to have a data in storage account where you are frequently accessing, then you will place the data in the hot tier. And there is something called cool tier where infrequently accessed data can be kept here. And for example, if you want to store a data and then retrieve it back after a month for report generation, then we have to choose this cool tier. And speaking of the cost, hot tier is more costlier than the cool. So always for now the demo purpose, I'll go and use hot tier. And you also have an option to enable tables and queue, but which we are not going to do now. Let's move on to the networking part. We make sure that all the virtual networks inside the subscription have access to this, so we can use public endpoint. But if you want to select a particular network, then you can go ahead and choose the selected network, and it's we have to mention the which virtual network and which subscription. For now, let's move on to public endpoint, and then coming on to the network routing, we have Microsoft and internet routing. I'll use a Microsoft internal routing, and data protection, which is a very important one when you create a storage account. Where we have a bunch of recovery options, one for the blob, one for the container, and one for the file share. What is this enable soft delete means is, if you create a blob file inside a container and you happen to delete the blob accidentally, or you just delete it because you wanted to do so, and then you later on realize that you want to recover the blob, then you have a day of 7 Windows day to retain that blob file. So this is basically a retention count, and by default it gives you 7 days, and you can just push it to any numbers you want. And same goes for deleting the containers, and same for deleting the file shares. I will explain you what is blob and container in the subsequent slides. So for now, you just understand that we have a retention count for the deletion on the blob level, container level, and file share level. And coming on to the last part is enabling versioning, and this is very much required if you are creating a storage account, and then when you want to do an object replication, which we will be seeing in the subsequent, this is one of the prerequisites. So if you want to enable object replication on this storage account, we have to make sure that we have enable versioning on this. So let's enable the versioning for block, and then enable block changes. And I will have a separate video on the versioning. For now, let's assume that we are enabling this versioning for the sake of doing an object replication. And going on to the tag, you can just give whatever the tag that you want. Let's mention that customer data and 100th location, and then let's do a review and create. So once that is created, I will resume back, and then we'll start learning the other concepts. I'll go create, and then I will pause the video. Okay guys, so we have created a storage account. The deployment is complete. So let's go on to the go to resource, and now you have a replication in place for geo redundant storage, and our account type is general purpose v2, and our location of the storage account is in central US. So let's move on to creating a container. So any storage account, you must create a container, and that's when you can upload any blob file. So to do that, just go on to the data storage blade, and then to your left hand side you see container. You click on that, and then you click on plus container, and then you can give it a name like central. Let's give the same name, actually, central US customer data 100. And then on to the public access level, let's click on to the blob anonymous read access for blob only. And I will explain the other access level in the coming slides. So for now, let's click on the blob anonymous read access, and let's just create this container. Once this container is created, which is then let's go on to upload a blob file. So once this container is in place, let's do a refresh. Yes, it is created, and let's click on to the container. Let's upload two files. One is a txt file, which is a structured one. Another file is unstructured binary data. Like I can just upload any random JPG file. So I have some file in desktop, which is sample.txt. I'll click open, and then upload. And I will also upload another file. Okay, so this is completed. So let's upload another file, a JPG file. Okay, I have a beautiful picture of New York. So I will upload that JPG file, and then click upload, and this will be up in a minute. Yep. So now that we have uploaded two files, and this is how you upload a JPG and a text file. And let's see what are all the other things that we can do here. So we have this file in place. Let's click on to the sample.txt file, and then you will have an overview and a URL being created for this file to access. So let's click on this URL, and then let's go on to the Chrome, and then select new incognito window, meaning that we want to access this file in an anonymous way, and then click enter, and we should be able to access this file. So here you can see that this is the content of the file, and let's try the same for the JPG file that we created. click on to the JPG file, click on the URL, incognito mode, and then click on the URL, and we should see a beautiful picture of New York. Yes, but however, we don't want to have anybody access this anonymous way, and then we don't want anybody to access our file outside, right? So to do that, we basically change the access level. So how do we do that is we go on to the container level and then click on the file that you want to change the access, and then you have an option here to say change access level, and then you can go ahead and do a private no access anonymous access. Let's click on that. Once you click on that, nobody will be having access to the files. So let's do a refresh, and then let's try on one more time and try to access outside the network in an anonymous way, and we will be getting an error. So you can see that this is erroring out. It says that the source does not exist. So this is because we make sure that the access level is in private and no anonymous access. So let's change that back to public access, and then I'll show you some other cool features that we have inside this blade actually. So we can move that back to blob anonymous read access and click OK, and that's how you can just toggle between back and forth. So once that is done, let's click onto the sample.txt file, and inside the overview you also have an ability to do versioning. I told you that I will upload a separate video for that, and you can also do a snapshot, and the cool part is you can edit the file on the go. So let's just edit something like that. Once you are done, you can just do a save, and it will persist in the data, and then close it, and now we should be able to see the modified content on the new window. Let's click on that. Yes, now you can see that we can modify this, and same way you can also open the JPG and have a review of that by going into that and click on edit, and the image will be popping up here. So that's it, guys. Now we learned how to upload, and you can also download the file by just click on to the checkbox and just download it either from inside or outside. So you click onto the file and you have an option to download to your local repository. Same for the JPG file. So now we have learned how to create a container, how to create a storage account, and how to upload and download the file, both TXT and JPG file. So let's move on to the other type where I will explain what is the types of blob types and what are all those. Okay guys, let's see what is blob types. There are three blob types. The first one is blob that stores data and binary data, and blobs are made up of blobs of data that can be managed individually. Blobs can store up to 190 terabytes. When we created a container initially, we had a container called central US customer data, and then we created two files which are of blob. So that is the first point, and the second one is append blobs, which are made up of blocks like blob, but they are more optimized for append operation, meaning that if you want to do a logging of data from a web server or from a virtual machine, this is a storage that you want to do. So that is called as append blocks. So here it says that append blocks are ideal scenario for such as logging data from virtual machines. So how do you create that? Let's quickly get into the Azure portal. Inside the container, you just have to click upload, and just randomly let's select some files, something like a text file. Okay, so let's do a profile PDF, and then in the advanced section you can choose the blob type, and here you can mention that this is a append blob. So we're not going to upload, I just want to show you how to do that. So let's move on to this slides back, and here we have a page blob. So page blob is basically used for random access files, and it can support up to 8 terabytes. And for example, when you create a virtual machine, its backend file, which are of VHT files, are always a page blob. So that's what this point says. So what it is, page blob stores virtual hard drives files and serve as a disk for virtual machines. So this is the three type of blob that we can have in a storage account. Okay guys, so now we know what are all the blob types and what its purpose and everything. So let's move on to the next chapter, where I will teach you what is lifecycle management and what its purpose. So to go and do a lifecycle management, we have to go inside the storage account, and all the way down you will see under the data management something called lifecycle management. But before doing that, we should understand why do we have to do. Let's say you have a file in a hot tier and nobody's using that, and you are being paid, you are being charged for that, and you want to make sure that you need to push that file from the hot tier to cold tier. And instead of doing it manually every time, you can actually go ahead and do a lifecycle management. What is that is, you basically create a rule and then write the rule, and then make sure that if the rule satisfies, then it does your action. So what is it? I will show you how to do. So get into the container, and below data management you have a lifecycle management. Click on that and add a rule. So inside the add rule, you can say that last modified 7 days, move to cold. You can mention that, and then what you are saying is, under the rule scope, is that apply the rule to all block in your storage account, or you can just limit the blob with the filters. So when you click on that, you have to mention the filter set, but now we'll move everything inside the storage account. And then you can mention the blob type. We only have block blobs, and we don't have append block, so I will uncheck it. And the subtype is base block. And then the next is the important part, where you have a if condition, and you are mentioning that if base blocks were last modified for more than 7 days, then move this file to cold storage. So what it's going to do is, if any files that are in hot tier that has not been used for past 7 days, you are asking them to move to the cold storage. So thereby you're not being charged for the hot tier. So let's just click on add to add the rule, and you have the rule in place. The cool part here is you can actually have many rules, and let's do another rule where we want to delete the blob if nobody's using it. So let's say like delete cold file 7 days. So here again we are doing the same stuff, but only thing is we are mentioning that if nobody's using the files for 7 days, let's go and delete the blob. Let's say like 3 days. Okay, more than 3 days, then we'll delete the blob, and then we can add the rule. So like that you can have multiple rule in place, and we can for time being, if you want to disable the blob rule, you can go and disable it, or you want to delete, you can do that. So but if you want to do it a bulk operation, you can also do by clicking on this, and then you can disable and delete. So this is life cycle management. Let's see what is object replication in the upcoming slides. Okay guys, let's see object replication, and what is it, object replication, first of all, right? So when you have a storage account in central US, and then you have your source data on the container, and then you have this file, and then imagine that you have another customer in East US, and then they have their own application running, and they need to access the data in central US. If that is the case, then it's actually a much overhead, because they have to do a cross-region access for the Azure Storage. So instead of that, what we're going to do is we're basically going to create a storage account in East US and also a container, and then what we're going to do is enable an object replication. from central US to east US, and thereby any resources that you create in east US can have a copy of the central US data inside their own local space, which is part of east US, and thereby it decreases the latency. It will be a low latency access, and it's much faster than doing a cross region fetch from the Azure. So let's go ahead and do object replication. The scenario is we want this source Azure storage account from central US to be copied to east US, and we already have a container in place in central US, and we have two files. One is the image, another a text file. So what we're going to do in the next chapter is we're going to create a storage account, and we make sure that it is on the east US. And before doing that, there is actually two prerequisites that needs to be followed when you enable object replication. One is that every storage account that you do an object replication should have a versioning in place that as part of your storage account wizard, and then you should also have and all the copy of data from central US to east US is always in a synchronous manner. So let's go and create this east US setup, and then let's go and do an object replication. So guys, I'm inside the portal, and let's quickly go to the storage account and see what we have. We already have a source storage account in place. Let's create a destination storage account. So let's name that as east. Let's name that as east USA customer backup data, and then let's do 1 2 3. What is this? Okay, backup. Okay, and then let's do on east US. It's already on east US, so let's have the same redundancy and standard premier. Only thing that we want to do is go towards data protection, and then, as I said, we need to enable versioning as part of the prerequisites. We'll also enable the block change feed, and let's just make sure that everything is in place. Yes, and let's go and review and create. And once I create the storage account, I will resume this back. Let's do a create, and it's initializing. I will pause the video and resume it back. Okay, so now we have the destination storage account, and one of the another prerequisite that I forgot to mention is that currently you can only do an object replication on general purpose v2 storage account type. So we have two storage account, both are of like v2, so general purpose v2. So one is on the central US, one is on the east US. So let's go and create a container on the destination as well. Backup, and let's mark it as blob anonymous access for now. And then once that is done, let's move on to the source storage account, which is central US. And when you scroll down all the way to the data management, you have something called object replication. Click onto that, and let's set up a replication rule. And our destination storage account is east US. Let's mention the container, source container, and then the destination container. And if you want to add any filters, like you want a particular file with a particular extension, you can do so, and you can do a copy over. Let's do change, and instead of so what is that is that you want to have only the newly created object to be copied, or you want a custom one where you can have a filter, or you can just mark it as everything. For now, let's mark it everything, because we want those two files that we created to be copied to the central US. And then click save and apply, and I will pause and resume it back. So yes, I got a message saying that successfully applied replication policy on source account, and the destination account. So what we can do is we can go back to the top on the source, and let's just click on the container, and we should be able to see some kind of a status of how is the replication going inside the source by clicking on the container. And let's see what is the replication status for sample.txt. And if you click on the sample.txt, when you scroll down, you're not seeing anything. That means that it's still in progress. Let's just come back after some time and see the progress of the replication. So after a span of like 5 minutes, I'm going to see the status of the replication. So I'm inside the source storage account, which is Central US. Let's click onto the container, and inside the container you will have a sample.txt, and when you scroll down, we should see some kind of a status. Yes, so here we are seeing that the object replication with policy ID and rule ID and the status is complete. So it means that the destination or storage account should have this file. Let's verify for this JPG, and it is completed as well. So let's move on to the destination storage account, which is East US customer backup. Inside the container, let's click on that, and we have these two files. Okay guys, so let's test the file and the destination, whether we can access it, and do we have the changed files. Yes, we have the copy of the file from source to here. And remember, we did an edit on that file, and it does reflect in the destination. So that's how you do object replication from one region to another region. And this marks the end of this tutorial. And so far what we have learned is we learned how to create a container in storage account, and how did we upload and download the blob, and we learned what are all the core storage services, access tiers, and we learned how to protect the data by enabling versioning, and then we had the retention in place for all the containers and blob and file shares, and then we learned what is lifecycle management, and finally we also learned object replication. And if you have any doubts, please post it in the comment section, and I will put some notes on the description of the YouTube, and I always welcome any critics for this tutorial, and have a great day. Bye bye. Once